Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Kevin McCarthy, Republicans had a little shindig in Western Pennsylvania today, rolled out their latest Contract Out America 2.0. They called it Commitment to America. Wow, that I got to tell you, that's clever. In fact, so clever that they believed that Abraham Lincoln actually said it. So, hearkening back to their roots, want you to believe that they're the party of Lincoln, because the Republican Party, clearly the party of Lincoln. This, not the party of Lincoln. No. In fact, perfect thing happened today. Folks over at the Daily Beast, under the banner that that they held, which you gotta love this. The banner was "Commitment is what transforms a promise into reality." This is what they said. Abraham Lincoln said, "This commitment is what transforms a promise into reality." Yes, hearkening back to good, honest Abe. Problem is, Honest Abe never said it. And you'd think somebody in the entire Republican Party had Google or something, could find out that no, this was actually Lehman Brothers from the 80s. And you go, this is really kind of a perfect situation. This is a party really full of it and beholden to Wall Street. So would it not be, perfect to steal a quote from freaking Lehman Brothers, who almost brought this country to its knees, and then attribute that quote to Honest Abe without any sense of irony. Now, the Commitment to America is basically just a ripoff of Newt Gingrich's Contract on America, or To America, I'm sorry. It really was a contract on. Now, Gingrich actually had a set of policy proposals with legislative goals and a way to go forward. And you could argue that it was good policy, it was bad policy. I argue a lot of it is what we're suffering under today. A lot of it was the stuff that created crisis. A lot of it is what, has made working class people miserable. But, that's the past. It's over. It's done with. We're dealing with a whole new set of misery brought on by our Republican friends who hate working people. This one, lots of vague things. And I love the fact that the first rollout, they evidently had a website that, there were some things they probably didn't want people to see. And immediately after realizing their mistake, as people were screenshotting the pages, they put it behind a password-protected wall. Again, kind of fumbling, kind of bumbling, but again, this is what we expect from the Keystone Cop Republicans and the minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, who, again, why do they keep trying to use the Reagan line? He said, every American should be asking, am I better off today than I was 2 years ago? And here's the thing. I don't know anyone who thinks, 2 years ago was better. Yeah, while we were all locked down, it was better. When you couldn't get toilet paper, that was better. Yeah, that was better. Now, according to him, Republicans, they have a plan to fix all of the things that Joe Biden has done. Everything is Joe Biden's fault. Everything. Never mind the 4 years before Biden. Don't look behind the curtain. Never mind the policies that created all of the mess that we have gotten into over these years because of bad conservative and neoliberal policies. Never mind that. Don't look behind the curtain. They, again, are trying to do what Trump was able to do. They're trying to grab that memory of the past. They're trying to grab onto that "Make America Great" frame. They're trying to make you think that they alone, they can do it. Yet when they had the opportunity, when they had the chance, when they were in power, what did they do? They lowered taxes for rich people. That's it. That's all they did. There was nothing. There's nothing else. in the list of accomplishments, lower taxes for rich people. Number 2, I don't have a cricket button, but crickets, nothing. And today we find out, what do they want to do? They want to roll back everything that President Biden has done. So that means the thing that's wildly popular, lowering prescription drug prices for seniors, that they were against, they want to take that away. So, Granny, when you go to the polls, remember, and look, the Republicans understand they want to do this quickly, because once Granny realizes that, oh, Joe Biden lowered my prescription drug prices, Granny's going to be fairly happy with Joe Biden, and that's going to make Republicans unhappy. When students realize they got a couple of bucks off their student loans because Joe Biden forgave $10,000 of it, they're going to be okay with that. They're going to be happy, and they're going to vote for Joe Biden and Democrats. Republicans are not happy about that. So what do they want to do? They want to roll that back and create this kind of intersectional kind of division and hatred and jealousy, because this is all they've got. Because if you look at their plan, it's light. It's really light. The idea that they want to end Social Security and Medicare, yeah, that's there. It's always there. It's always there. And look, the Roe decision, the abortion thing is huge, front and center. And this is one of those things that was on the slide that they didn't want you to see. Oops. Didn't want you to see that that's the main tenet of their, I don't even want to call this a plan, because it's kind of just a bunch of marketing talking points, a bunch of things to throw out there to get stupid people to regurgitate. Not real heavy in the get done. It's not, the Larry the Cable Guy wouldn't be going, we're going to get her done. This isn't that. This isn't get her done territory. Not at all. Now, understand, there are some things that they do want to get done. Because, well, you've got 166 Republicans who have co-sponsored a bill that would criminalize abortion. You've already got that. You've got 158 Republicans from the Republican study group who want to slash Social Security and Medicare. Understand, they want to raise the Social Security age up to 70. They want to slash and burn and privatize Social Security and Medicare. This is not new. This is what they've been wanting to do for a decade and a half, 2 decades, 3 decades. This is their plan. So, you can try and rebrand the same bad ideas over and over again. Not gonna work. You could rebrand extremism as often as you want. It's not going to change the fact that they want to criminalize abortion. They want to slash and burn and gut Social Security, and they want to attack our democracy because, oh, by the way, they're going to go after voting in this election denial nonsense again. And you go, is this a governing set of principles, or is this what people do when they've got no ideas and all the best they can offer is division, gridlock, and hatred? Because this is what it was today. This was the song and dance. When Marjorie Taylor Greene is sitting dead center in your little rollout, you know you're not serious. You know you're not serious about governing. Now look, do we have problems? Yeah, we got problems. We got some inflation problems. But Joe Biden didn't do that. There's no switch in the White House where Joe Biden sat down behind the Resolute desk and said, you know what? I'm going to create inflation. Doesn't have that superpower. You know who does have that superpower? Corporations. CEOs have that superpower. Because if you look at their profits, wow, fat and happy. And until I hear some policymakers going, you know what, we've got to do something on the profit front. We need higher taxes on these folks. We need windfall profit taxes. We need some oversight. We need something. Not going to change. Where's that in the plan? Where's that the commitment to America? We've got supply chain issues. We need to reshore manufacturing. They did their little dog and pony show at a manufacturing plant in Pittsburgh. Yet they voted against They voted against the CHIPS bill, most of them. They voted against the Inflation Reduction Act that is helping to create some manufacturing here in the country. They voted against the infrastructure bill. They voted against everything that would have, well, helped bring jobs back. And most of them voted against the CHIPS bill. And you go, well, how? Why? Oh, because the other guy did it. And as I said, look, we've got some real problems. We've got problems with healthcare costs. We should be working to bring those down, not make them worse. And totally destroying the system that we have and going back to the good old pay or die Republican plan, that's not moving us forward. So I find it interesting that he did his little song and dance today when the reality is Biden is addressing a lot of these problems. And I think we're at a moment. And I'll tell you, I'm glad he put this out here because there's a moment where you can go, no, okay, here's what we got. We got empty words from McCarthy and the Republicans. We got Marjorie Taylor Greene right in the center of it. Can slap her mug on it. That has no path forward. They have no legislation that they're talking about. It's just a bunch of blah. Like a chewed up word salad of vomit right there on the wall. Nothing. And you've got what the administration's concretely been moving forward on. Now we can argue, is it enough? I say it's not because we've got a Republican Party hell bent on no. So this is why this election matters. This is why this moment in history matters so much. Because we're on a path that I think is going to move us back towards being self-sufficient, reshoring manufacturing, helping working class folks do better, believing in strong unions. And oh, by the way, did you hear anything about that in the McCarthy little song and dance and pony show? No. Because here's the thing. You know what built the fabulous 50s and 60s? Honestly and truthfully, the simplest way to think about this, smart government investment. We built massive projects, spent an enormous amount of money on roads and bridges and future technologies and all of this stuff with private-public partnerships. We spent public money in private industry to get the things that we, the people, wanted and did it in massive numbers, created millions of jobs. How did we pay for that? We taxed rich people at an incredibly high rate. Top end 92%. You go, no, look it up. We tax corporations at 56%, not the 15 that they're paying now. And they're not even paying that in most cases. And we took that money and we spent it on education and healthcare, infrastructure, and making the country great. And you know how we did that? We did that by having strong unions and workers who were organized and united and fighting the right fights. Better opportunities for themselves, their children, and future generations. And what's happened over these years? Republicans like McCarthy, well, they've fought to break that up, to pit us against each other. Why? So the people paying his freight can line their pockets. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Sure you got a lot of thoughts on this Dog and Pony show. Back after this. Stick around.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is like the most Trump thing ever. Yesterday we talked about this Ohio Congress candidate, J.R. Majewski. J.R., the story goes, J.R. said he did all of these incredible things while in Afghanistan, didn't shower for like 40 days, all kinds of stuff, all the combat stuff that, that legends are made of. This was his campaign. And someone came out and said, well, wait a second, records show you were never there. You were never there. Well, he has now come out, he's doubling down, basically saying, well, classified. It's all classified. So I guess this is one of those doubling down on the doubling down moments, I think. We're going to find out. This will not end. And, well, I doubt it ends well for JR. Anyway, let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you today?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. So what I wanted to say was, when Eisenhower passed that building the roads, the interstates,
yep.
I believe, 8 or 9 when they finally finished the Interstate 79 that goes through our little county. And I remember when they opened it up, for traffic, that my dad loaded me and Mom up in the car, and off we went just so Dad could drive on that interstate.
That's fabulous. No, I mean, that's when we were making investments. That's when we were changing people's lives. And I would argue that interstate changed people's lives.
Oh, it did. And, I believe, and this is my personal opinion, because I was born in 60 and the 70s were my heyday. But I actually believe that, the 60s were starting to be the heyday of our nation. And in the 70s, that's when we hit the peak because, all of a sudden women had more rights, the minorities and blacks had more rights. And, we were pouring money into, education and everything else. And then, of course, the Republicans and the right wing lost their minds.
And that's when it had to stop. And anybody who's read Lewis Powell's treatise on saving free enterprise from 1971 understands that, capitalism was losing its mind. Corporate America was losing their mind, and they were going to do anything they could do to hold on to power. And they were 71, 72, founding of the Heritage Foundation and all of these think tanks. This was the beginning of the war on the working class and clawing back all of that prosperity that your parents and my grandparents were able to put in their pocket through their work and their labor.
Oh, I agree. And, you sit there and you try to explain to people that are not the same age or don't seem to have the same, what do I want to say, cultural knowledge. And they just look at you, and you're trying to explain to them, no, we had all this money, and we were pouring it into the economy and education and infrastructure, and, and they just look at you. They can't believe it.
That's why you got to remind them. You got to keep pointing it out and keep telling the stories.
That's it. Well, you have a good evening, Rick.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate it. Which is why, again, we're going to be taking our working class heroes tour on the road the month of October as we travel across Ohio, Pennsylvania, into Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and telling those stories. Because look, there are hundreds of stories like that out there. The reality is the 60s into the 50s, 60s into the 70s, that was the height and the power of the working class. And that's because we had strong labor unions to demand it. We had high taxation on the very wealthy. And they spent that money on, because they didn't pay it to the government always. They invested it in businesses. They invested it in hospitals and schools and all kinds of things. Now they're just hoarding it. Think stock buybacks. So here's election time's coming. Talking about the commitment to America. One of the things that they want to do is election security. Yes, election security. And what does that mean? That means no more mail-in balloting, no more mail-in voting. In fact, a guy named Jim Marchant, he's running for Secretary of State in Nevada. he has called for the end of voting by mail, because he claims that it is rife with fraud. My problem is he did it. He used vote by mail. So you go, hold on, wait a second. You used it, but it's rife with, it's bad. Explain. And this is the weird thing, because, Republicans use it too. And in fact, it's going to kick off. The early voting begins in 4 states right now. Minnesota, today, South Dakota, Virginia, and Wyoming, in the 6-week sprint to Election Day. All of that's going to begin. And what you had is, I saw this clip online of this guy, Matt Shea. He's a Washington State representative. He's also the senior pastor of On Fire Ministries. I'm going, I don't know, is that On Fire? That's the other place, isn't it? Never mind. But he goes on this kind of prayer, kind of preachy kind of thing about how mail-in ballots are bad, and how everyone, thank goodness everyone has seen the 2000 Mule movie that's been debunked by like everybody. Evidently, he wants to train certified, trained Dropbox watchers. They want surveillance. They want armed patrols. They want to intimidate voters. But you have these groups out there, like in Arizona, for instance, the Lions of Liberty. You got to love the names they come up. I wonder if they sit home at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, because probably none of them have girlfriends, they're alone in their underwear or their boxers, just kind of, thinking up, these kind of names. Anyway, they're going to have Operation Dropbox, where they're going to go sit and watch Dropboxes. There's a fun Saturday night. Come on, Bubba, let's go on down to the Dropbox. Let's bring the never mind. And evidently you've got a local sheriff who's being supportive, and that's going to make this much more difficult for voting folks. And also in Michigan, of course, you've got a combination of the T-Twizzlers, the COVID deniers, and the Militigan folks all coming together because they want to have, I think it was something like 5,000 of these. Don't forget the LaRouche people. All these folks coming out to watch those boxes. Again, none of them can get girlfriends, so I guess the only box they can watch is a mail-in box. So there's that. Now the thing is the only fraud we keep finding, the weird part of this, is coming from them. And understand, I'm hoping, and this is where we've got to, in these states, you've got to ramp up protection of voting. And this is where on the federal level, time to start maybe calling out the National Guard. Because this level of organized intimidation, this kind of organized harassment is going to get violent. And there's going to need to be someone to protect the rights of voting Americans. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day the Progressive Miners of America wrapped up their founding convention in Gillespie, Illinois. Fed up with concessions and what they viewed as heavy-handed anti-democratic rule by United Mine Worker President John L. Lewis, Illinois miners met to break decisively. Area miners were active in radical politics, and many supported currents within the socialist and communist movements. That July, Lewis opened the contract and agreed to a 20% pay cut. Tens of thousands of miners were furious and threw up picket lines at mines throughout central and southern Illinois. In Franklin County, striking miners were assaulted, shot, and beaten by special deputies and strike-breaking thugs. Many miners thought Lewis had had a hand in the violence against them. 2 miners were killed and hundreds more injured. By September 1st, 273 delegates representing 40,000 miners resolved to break from the UMWA, form a new union, and plan immediate negotiations with coal operators. They drafted a constitution emphasizing rank and file industrial democracy. A women's auxiliary was established with Agnes Bernass Wick as its head. It imbued union solidarity and leadership qualities among non-mining women. An enraged Lewis charged dual unionism, but the new PMA alleged they represented 90% of Illinois miners. The split gave rise to the Illinois Mine Wars. Years of shootings, bombings, and assaults became almost commonplace as both unions struggled for power. The PMA soon faced internal fighting as conservatives attempted to wrest leadership from many of the founders. Though the union never dominated the industry, it continued to represent thousands of Illinois miners throughout the 20th century.
For many people, the animals they adopt and love become more like family members than pets. We have deep relationships with cats, dogs, parrots, goats, horses, and other fellow critters who at least pretend to love us back, providing comfort and joy all around. Sadly, though, life for all of us animals is a spin around the wheel of fortune, so illness and injuries happen. That's why one of the most valued members of every community are the staffers in our local veterinarian offices. Practically all vets, nurses, technicians, and support staff are there chiefly because they love animals and get personal satisfaction from providing care for them. When I say they are there, I not only mean 9 to 5, but this group of independent health providers are committed to being there when needed, including off hours and days off, for animal misfortune and suffering don't go by clocks and calendars. Local practitioners also try to be there for low-income people, offering deferred payment plans and even discounted fees so their animals can get the treatment they need. But wait, sound the ambulance sirens. Something is going horribly wrong. This venerable profession has recently been collapsing into a corporate model of Wall Street-owned chains. They're monopolizing markets, reducing staff, gutting service, and prioritizing the love of money over the love of animals. It's not uncommon these days for frantically worried customers to bring an ill or injured pet into their old reliable vet office, only to find it has quietly come under chain ownership, is understaffed, and is unwilling to accept the patient, forcing a desperate scramble to find emergency care, often out of town. This is Jim Hightower saying the same profiteering corporate mentality that has proven disastrous for human health care is now rapidly locking down pet care, and that's an act of animal cruelty. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's Banned Book Week. Yep, Banned Book Week. In fact, my local library sent an email out to all of the folks like me with the title, looking for a new title to read, try a banned book. Stop by the library and take a look at our display and find the banned books. And look, this is one of those things, like when I was a kid, it was all the forbidden stuff that we went to. Maybe people will find these. And I'm just amazed that these folks who want to ban and censor everything, they haven't figured this out yet. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on Banned Book Week, I've asked Randy Weingarten to come talk with us. Randy is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFT, their website, aft.org. Randy, thanks for taking time for us.
Of course.
So
it's always great to be with you.
Thanks so much. It's Banned Book Week. It's Banned Book Week. We're now going to find all those books that, that they don't want us to read.
You know, it's so, and as you just said, the fastest way you get anybody to read something is when you tell them not to read it. So, you know, I don't, but in a real way, what the people who are trying to ban books are doing is they're actually taking away freedom. If you know, a parent has every right to, have a conversation with their children and not want, certain books in the house and things like that. They have every right to want to do that. That is a parent's right with his or her or their kids. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to stop everybody else from reading it. So this summer, there was a district that was trying to ban the Diary of Anne Frank. At the same time as there are districts or libraries or others who are making a big deal about banning a book about Ruby Bridges, a book that Toni Morrison wrote, To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, these are things that are being banned. So what is that about? Now, they turned around the district in Texas got so embarrassed, they let people read the book about Anne Frank. But let's just even think about Anne Frank and Ruby Bridges. Here's a Jewish girl and a black girl, both of whom facing real struggle and adversity. And the writers, in Anne Frank's case, her diary, telling that story. Why would anybody ban that book? That is about teaching others empathy. It's about people seeing themselves there. It's about struggle. And so Ban Book Week is about saying we need the freedom for everyone to have access to books. And you, those who are saying they believe in freedom, okay? Believe in our freedom to make sure that kids and adults have access to great literature where you can see yourself, where you can think about things. That's what reading is.
Yeah. Now, I find it interesting. There's a group out there, Moms for Liberty, and to use your freedom frame, they use that word liberty and freedom a lot. And I don't know that they know what it means, but this Moms for Liberty group, they're the ones that are really kind of pushing this. And I think it's more than just about the books. I think this is more about destroying public education and returning us to a really horrible negative period.
Well, look, I am sure that there is someone within Moms for Liberty that got uncomfortable, or a kid came home one day and was uncomfortable with a conversation in a classroom. There's always a nub of truth in any of the stuff that happens. But let's look at what they are doing. What they're really saying is that for them to have liberty, other people's liberty has to be taken away from them. And that's just not right. Like, okay, I get that, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder, there were people who were upset watching a white cop have his knee on a black man for 7 minutes and kill that black man. And I get that people were, of course you should be uncomfortable with that. If you're not uncomfortable with that, you're not a sentient human being. So the conversation then, anger about it, I get that those are uncomfortable conversations. They are. But, when one says that my white son is uncomfortable, therefore let's not have uncomfortable conversations, what about the black kid who's been uncomfortable for years? The goal for all of us is to actually respect everybody. We got to respect that white son, and we got to respect that trans kid, and we got to respect that black girl. That's our job, to respect everybody. So when you do this, don't say gay bill. Sorry, I don't mean to yell. But when you do it, don't say gay bill. You're saying, okay, we're not going to respect that kid who has gay parents, or we're not going to, this kid who's transitioning. Think about what's going on in that kid's head anyway, and you're not going to let that kid have a conversation with anybody?
Yeah.
So our job is about respecting everybody. And what Moms for Liberty are doing is they're saying, okay, my kid comes first, not all kids. And what I'm saying, all kids come first. We got to do this for all kids. We got to help all kids.
I'm right there with you. And look, on the transitioning thing, I don't have all the answers. And here's the one thing that I do know, though. I know government doesn't, and I don't want government making those decisions. I don't want theocrats making those decisions. I don't want authoritarians making those decisions. Those are family decisions.
That's right. And this is why it's just unbelievable to me how a family whose child thinks that, is wondering about what sex that child is, that family is going through hell. And that child's going through hell. I mean, why wouldn't we create a loving environment? Why would you have in Texas somebody call the child abuse services on that family? I mean, so this is part of what's going on right now. We need freedom for everybody.
Yeah.
Not just people who have power in a particular place. And we need education for everybody. That's what public education is. It is for everyone. And it's not to take away the money from public education. It's not. So what we're trying to do right now, frankly, is we're very focused on 4 or 5 strategies that we think will help kids recover and thrive. And that's reading, that's social, emotional support through things like community schools, that's bringing parents and teachers together intentionally so that we rebuild relationships just like kids are rebuilding relationships. That's creating pathways, college and career. And that's making sure that people have the teachers that they need and the conditions they need. And we call this what kids need. So, I was in Florida this week, and as DeSantis is just blaming and shaming teachers and trying to divide people and, flying planes with, migrants to all sorts of places, what we're trying to do is we went to 2 schools where kids are really learning. They're learning to be coders. They're learning an avocation. They're learning robotics. We need money for those programs. That's what we said to DeSantis. Help us with that. Stop with your culture wars. That's what we're trying to do.
But the cruelty and the bullying and all that's the point in my view. At least that's what I think. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, AFT.org, their website. On the bullying front today, Kevin McCarthy held his little commitment to America, whatever this latest rollout is. And one of the people there asked, throughout critical race theory, diversity, equity and inclusion, gender identity, anti-bullying programs. She said these are all Marxist-style programs targeting our children. And you tweeted out that you were confused. Why are you confused?
Well, look, I taught in the 1990s. We had all these anti-bullying programs. See a bully, stop a bully. We try to create welcoming and safe environments. 1990s are the last century, by the way. But so when I read that and heard that comment, what it said to me was, okay, does this mean that every time I say to a child, hi, how are you? You're okay? What's going on in your life? Then I'm going to be called a socialist or a Marxist? Or if I or any other teacher stop a bullying situation in a hallway, we're going to be called a communist? I mean, it's crazy. It's like what they're doing is like, I would say that McCarthy's program is the Stop Empathy program, the Stop Caring program. I mean, we know how to teach honest history. And we also know how to make classrooms safe and welcoming for all kids. And that's what we're trying to do. So stop putting names on this stuff and stop calling teachers names. And let's teachers and parents work together to help our kids thrive.
But I look at this, Randy, and a parent standing up and throwing this out there saying, critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion. Somehow these are bad things. I'm questioning what's in this parent's mind. Because, look, I want my kids to learn accurate history. In fact, back in 2015, We decided to take a civil rights tour where we went across the South, wherever this country treated black people. We went to find this out, and we found horrible things. And yes, my kids got to see this. They didn't do it, but what they learned is maybe we shouldn't allow this to continue, and maybe we can learn from history and do better. For me, that's why we learn. Or am I missing something?
Well, what it really, it seems to me, with that string of names, without going through the fact that we actually don't teach critical race theory in primary or secondary school. It's a college and law school course or theory to really try to understand systemic or structural racism. But that's beside the point. That's beside the point. When somebody strings together those concepts or terms, those are all kinds of ways of creating context and understanding and trying to make things more equal and trying to level the playing field and create opportunity for all and having a lived experience. So you don't want bullies to bully kids. You want kids to feel like they are, that they got their mojo back and they belong in a place.
Yeah, see,
and
here's
sometimes so they're using these words. They're trying to make them evil. They're trying to make them scary. They're trying to create a fear of the other. And by doing that, continue chaos and division and fear of the other at the very same time as we need to be in person in schools to rebuild relationships and to really see each other as human beings.
Yeah, see, this is where the divide is, and this is where I think the Kevin McCarthys of the world and my friends on the right who are wearing the red hats, they want that division, they want that cruelty, they want that focus on the other, because that's what rips us apart. And the more divided we are, well, the easier it is to fleece us and continue down the path that we've been on for so long.
Look, the more divided we are, it always happens. An America that's divided is not America that moves forward. A country that's divided doesn't move forward. And the more divided we are, the more there's the fear of the other, the more, the people who are still in power, like the rich. That's why it's funded by people like Betsy DeVos or Richard Uihlein. They want the world the way they want the world, as opposed to let everybody succeed. That's what America is. It's just, and no one accuses me of wearing rose-colored glasses. I'm not saying we don't have struggles, but one of the things we have to do is deeply respect each other. Yeah. And this kind of division and division is dehumanizing. It's degrading. It's creating fear. It's supposed to do in schooling is we have to create respect for each other, not the fear of each other.
No, I'm right there with you. But the sad reality is there are forces out there that want to keep us divided and pitted against each other. And as you pointed out, the wealthy like Betsy DeVos and others want that so they can continue to fleece us, which is why I'm so thrilled to see what's going on in this country. We're seeing workers organizing like none other in my lifetime. In fact, you've got some nurses in Connecticut who are on strike right now, and nurses across this country have said, we're not going to take the kind of nonsense we've taken, and we want better wages, hours, conditions, and I hope we see more of that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. Today Gallup put out, I think, another poll that showed 71% of Americans favor unions, the highest number in 57 years. Why? Because what do unions do? They help create for the people who are in unions a path to the middle class, a path to, let's go back to freedom, to economic freedom, to empowerment, to be able to feed your family, fend for your family, not worry about anything else. It's freedom. But most of us don't have it alone. So what happens with this nurse strike that my members are on in Windham, Connecticut? the boss has more money than God, or I think the boss has more money than God. You know, God would have to tell us that. But it's Hartford Health. They got a lot of money from the federal government during COVID, and they can't give the nurses a decent raise. These nurses had mandatory overtime. They worked really hard. There was a sign yesterday at the picket line of a gentleman, an older gentleman with a green sign pointing to a nurse that said, "She saved my life." And this employer can't change its position at bargaining since June. So they're on strike. And today the mayor was there. Other unions were there. The congressman was there. The senator was there. Other people from the lieutenant governor was there, because together we can change things. And that's what these nurses are showing. And that's why people want unions, because they want a better life for themselves and their families. So instead of the grievance, the fear of the other, what people are doing by joining unions is saying, okay, let's have our piece of the economic pie.
And for me, the unions is the place where we take on bullies, where we take on crummy bosses, and where we come together. And I'm thrilled to see more of us doing that. But Randy, I appreciate the time. As always, great talk with you. Keep up the fight. Keep up the great work. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
You too, Rick. Thank you.
Good stuff. Our good friend Randy Weingarten. Make sure you check out their website, aft.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Maybe we should be demanding that when those books are available, that we have discussions about them and begin the understanding process. I go back to when my daughter came home years ago, learned about Rosa Parks. And so what'd you learn? Well, she was tired. That was it. That whole bit of history, that whole changing of the direction of this country was boiled down to one woman on a bus was tired. And that wasn't even close to what it was. And that made me go, no, I want my kids to learn the full breadth of history. I didn't get the chance to do that. I didn't get the chance as a child to be exposed to actual history. She was tired. That's what I got. So we set out and we went to a number of states across the South and we sought out that history. We went to the museum, the Rosa Parks Museum, and had the curator, explain the entire thing, which was much, even more complicated than I had imagined. And it opens up so much more discussions about organizing and about planning and preparation and just so much about the law. And I think what it does is it makes things so much more full. It makes things so much more, the context so much more important. That to me is the part that I think we got to get to at some point. And education is about critical thinking. Education is about filtering things through things. Education is about so much more than just, what we're being spoon-fed. That is my thought. I'd love to hear yours. Lucy, I appreciate the email. We're probably not on the same page. There's the other side of this, though. And the other side of this for me are the people who are calling for the book bans. Some of them, maybe like Lucy's, good intentioned. Maybe, I want to protect the innocence of my child and I have this fear and all this. But I think some of it is about destroying public education and taking us in a really negative direction. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of that as well. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find yours, you'll find ours. Quick break, right back.
Time for an intervention. We need to hold fossil fuel companies and their enablers to account.
UN Secretary General calls for fossil fuel industry to pay for climate damages.
I just want to say one word to you. Yes, sir. Plastics.
New initiative takes on plastics and the petrochemical industry. Plus,
if we want to beat China, pass the Kigali Treaty.
U.S. Senate approves the first climate treaty in decades.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We have a rendezvous with climate disasters.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it is Climate Week in New York City as the UN General Assembly meets. Are we finally going to solve this whole climate change thing this week?
Not this week. Oh. But I will say, as we go to air, Hurricane Fiona is barreling toward the island of Bermuda as a strong Category 4 hurricane.
Not good.
And in Puerto Rico, nearly 800,000 households still have no power or clean water after Hurricane Fiona wiped out the island's fragile electric grid, meaning no electricity to run water treatment systems or pump water into homes.
Meaning that's for more than 800,000 people. That's well over a couple million at this point.
Yep. And, as mentioned, it's the annual gathering of world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly in New York City this week. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres gave a somber assessment of global affairs in his opening address, saying the world is, quote, in great peril and gridlocked, unwilling to face the major challenges that threaten the future of humanity, like climate change, poverty, and war. Guterres cited the mounting toll of record-shattering extreme weather disasters that scientists say are supercharged by the burning of fossil fuels. He called for rich nations to end billion-dollar annual subsidies to the fossil fuel industry that are effectively subsidizing climate destruction, and to claw back some of the industry's record profits from spiking energy prices thanks to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Thanks, Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Polluters must pay. And today I'm calling on all developed economies to tax the windfall profits of fossil fuel companies. Those funds should be redirected in two ways: to countries suffering loss and damage caused by the climate crisis, and to people struggling with rising food and energy prices.
Wealthy nations have long resisted paying poorer countries for loss and damage from climate disasters and helping them to adapt to accelerating impacts.
Even though they're the ones who caused all of this trouble.
And that is going to be a major point of contention for the next UN Climate Summit in November in Egypt. A leaked document obtained by The Guardian this week shows that poorer countries intend to demand a new financial settlement, potentially with new taxes on fossil fuel use, to fund loss and damage payments and adaptation projects.
Good.
But some good news on that front. This week, Denmark became the first wealthy country in United Nations history to pledge compensation to the developing world for the consequences of fossil fuel use.
Also good.
Denmark pledged to pay more than $13 million to support countries hard hit by extreme weather disasters.
Well, that's not much money.
No, it's not. In other news, in a new report, the Government Accountability Office warns the federal government faces rising fiscal exposure from increasingly costly extreme weather disasters, and that government-wide action is needed to limit the financial risks. The GAO recommends agencies incorporate climate resilience into their infrastructure and planning, and Congress and agencies should develop a clear strategic national plan to guide national climate adaptation efforts.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
And some more good news. Billionaire former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg announced that he is taking on the plastics industry with an $85 million campaign aimed at blocking the petrochemical industry's push to increase production of plastics that are made from fossil fuels.
Well, now that he's gotten rid of all the guns and solved global warming, I'm sure his plastics campaign will be gangbusters.
The Beyond Petrochemicals initiative seeks to block more than 120 proposed petrochemical projects in the United States and will bolster local environmental justice groups. And finally, some very good news.
I'll be the judge of that.
On Wednesday, the U.S. Senate finally joined the rest of the world in ratifying the Kigali Amendment to the 1987 Montreal Protocol, the first global climate treaty that saved the ozone layer, which protects all life on Earth. The Kigali Amendment phases out the use of climate-warming hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs. Those are newer chemical superpollutants used in refrigeration and air conditioning. U.S. companies backed it now that they hold patents on the products that the world will need to replace them. And that attracted just enough Republican votes to pass.
Okay, that is very good news. For much more on that and all of the other stories we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Still got time to partake in Banned Book Week in my local public library. Good on them. The good folks at Bosler Library are celebrating Banned Book Week from the American Library Association. All of your favorite banned books right there, able for you to, find out what all the craziness is about. And this is the thing. The people who are pushing these book bans, were they never kids? I mean, the reality is most of these books, nobody knew were on the shelves to begin with until they said, we want to ban these. Now everyone's going to go run and get it. Did nobody hear of Two Live Crew? I mean, when I was a kid, that was Their album was on the market for a couple of years. Nobody cared. The second Tipper Gore and the rest of them said, no, we need labels. Everybody had to run out and find out. So, again, thank you to the book burners and the banners for bringing out all these wonderful books. And here to share some thoughts on Book Ban Week, I've asked Olivia Little to come talk with us. She's a senior researcher over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. Olivia, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So let's start there. I mean, I never got this whole book banning thing because most kids aren't going to read the books in the library anyway until you say, no, don't do that. Don't look at that. Don't touch that. Then any kid with their salt is going to go, no, as a kid, I absolutely have to read it.
Oh yeah, I definitely incentivize is reading it for sure. I mean, the first time when I had books taken away from me, that's when I learned how to like illegally download PDFs when I was like 12.
See, again, we didn't have PDFs back when I was a kid. You actually had to find the book, which is why they used to burn them in the old days. It's kind of a little harder now with the inner tubes and all this, which again, to me is this idea that we're gonna have another one of these misadventures of censorship that, you know, the folks on the right always said that they were against until they were for. I guess, you know, we're going to get steamrollers out again and start rolling over things. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous. But for me, it seems like there's something more to the plot than just, well, we want to protect young eyes from ideas. So I look at this group, Moms for Liberty, and I love the names. I love euphemistic names because this is anything but liberty. I think there's a bigger plot here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Moms for Liberty is this far-right organization that claims to be like for parental rights, but really right now they're the driving force behind like the nationwide book banning crusade, right? And they're really well connected to right-wing politicians, right-wing media figures, and what they're doing now is sort of like trying to speed up the actual book banning removal process by partnering with like pro-censorship organizations that they're also affiliated with.
Yeah, and again, I go back to this. You know, I hear my friends on the right, especially my friends on the right, free speech. Yet, I guess it depends on which speech they view as free, right?
Right. No, it's so contradictory that, you know, preaching free speech while also vigilantly trying to ban like a set of books. But you have to understand that everything that Moms for Liberty does and has ever done, the end goal of that is flipping school boards. It's an electoral mission at the end of the day. They're trying to like evoke some sort of like moral outrage from the public and from communities in order to like instill distrust in like public school, you know, teachers and administrators and school board members. And then those who disagree with them, school board members in particular, who disagree with them, they'll vote out, right? And that's at the end of the day is their goal is to take over like local school boards.
Yeah, I wish we could get those folks to use this kind of energy in denying our kids, you know, opportunity to have other thoughts. I wish they could take that energy and that fervor and do it for things that I think really are offensive. You know, child hunger, child poverty, child homelessness. I mean, there are a lot of really good causes out there, a lot of really good things to help kids that this kind of care and activity could, you know, maybe be useful. This doesn't seem useful to me. No,
it's absolutely unproductive. And again, what it does is instill like distrust in like public schools. And at the end of the day, they're anti-public education for sure. I mean, Betsy DeVos spoke at their national conference this year, right? Who they're close with. So it's all part of a bigger agenda to not only flip school boards, but then to try to gut public education as a whole.
So now the picture's starting to get a lot clearer. It's really not about the books, is it? This is just a convenient tool to destroy public education, to privatize and profitize, and also to indoctrinate. Again, the things that they love to point their fingers at everybody else at is what they're doing. And I look at, you know, in my state of Pennsylvania, we got this billionaire who's spending an enormous amount of money to destroy public education. Because one, I think he thinks he's going to profit off of this, Jeffrey Yaz. And two, well, it's about indoctrinating the next generation to not be thinkers, just to be followers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's indoctrinating them into, what they deem moral and what subscribes to, this like Christian nationalist ideology that they're trying to inject into schools.
See, now, as a parent, got to be honest, as a parent, I'm a firm believer in parental rights. I don't want that theology jammed down my kid's throat. I don't want that kind of oppression and indoctrination and that kind of thing. Everybody I know who's gone down that path, not happy, not good for them. It just seems to me, as a parent who should have parental rights, I should be able to not participate with the Moms for Liberty group. Is that what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. And, like you said, they're yelling parental rights, but it's their parental rights. It's whatever they want, not what other parents want. So they're, I don't know, I feel like infringing on other parents who disagree with them, who want like free like literature, who want like freedom of thought in schools.
And this is where I come back to, my grandfather always used to say, you have the right to do anything you want until your right infringes on mine. The old Justice Black thing, you can flail your fists around until it touches the tip of my nose. And look, you can decide if your children should be able to want them to read this stuff or not, just as I should be able to decide if my kids want to read them or not. I tend to want them to have more of an experience of the world. I tend to think public education is more than just learning to read and write and arithmetic. I think it's critical thinking. I think it's socialization. I think it's learning to be a well-rounded person. And yet I got these groups like these well-funded Moms for Liberty who want my kids to walk down a very narrow path that's not going to serve them for their life. And I'm appalled by that.
Yeah, no, it's horrifying. And it's even more horrifying that it's across the country, right? It's not isolated to one area. They have over 200 chapters around the US.
And again, this comes out of, where did this spring out of? Because I don't think a lot of people know who this group is. There's a lot of these right-wing groups with these euphemistic names, your Moms for Dogs and Puppies and Apple Pie or whatever, Liberty. They misuse these words an awful lot. Who are these people? Where'd they come from? And more importantly, where's their money come from?
Well, no surprise, they came from Florida. They're two former school board members who came together. There's a third that they don't mention, but that's on their like tax documents as a founder, who's the wife of the Florida's Republican Party. The vice president of Florida's Republican Party, his wife was one of the original founders, who they don't mention now.
Well,
which again, she's on the documents. So they came together. We don't know about funding yet, right? They're too new. They like filed. I think January 1st, 2021 is when they actually became like an organization. So we don't know yet, but we do know who they're partnered with regularly, right? Like Heritage Foundation was one of the big sponsors. They partner with Turning Point USA, the Leadership Institute, all of those sort of like right-wing libertarian organizations that sort of have the same, like circle of money. So you can make guesses about where their money is from. But also what's interesting is, when they first started, within, I think it was like a month or two, they were already on the Rush Limbaugh show, right? They were immediately booking, and this is when they had like very few members, right? Like I think maybe 3 chapters. They were able to book major like media appearances, and since then they're like regulars on Steve Bannon's War Room, on Fox. They've just become right-wing sweethearts. So they've really had the right-wing media boosting them. So it's less of it's less of a grassroots movement and more of like it was spearheaded by right-wing media who was telling their followers, join us, right? Like Steve Bannon has said, join Moms for Liberty, right? They have this like massive backing. But yeah, so they started in Florida and they've since like flooded across the US.
And this is where, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is where I try to tell my left friends the mastery of what the right has been able to do is build a media empire that creates these things and not you. they want you to believe it just organically happened. It was a grassroots effort. But when you dig deeper into it, you find out that it's coming out of these think tanks, and it's coming out of these media entities that are creating these things specifically for a political agenda. And that political agenda is to steal public education from we the people. And once they do that, once they can take us back to the good old days of segregation and tear us apart, because right now they're using every minority group to push charter schools and cyber charter and all this other stuff to take money from public schools. Once they've killed off public schools, then it's about them, and then desperation for everyone else. And this is not a new game, I don't think.
No, definitely not. No, it's like, I mean, it's a repeat of what we've seen before with different, groups targeting public education. But it's really scary that they've been able to, sort of reach so many people and so many parents who I feel like are genuinely concerned about their children, but they're using them as like political pawns at this point in order to further that agenda to undermine public education.
No, look, I'm a concerned parent as well. I got 3 kids. I want them to get the best education they can possibly get. This is their one shot to get the education that they need, the one that's going to help them throughout their lives to be critical thinkers so they can participate in their government, good people so they can participate in society as a whole, and also smart enough and talented enough to earn a living, to pursue a career, to pursue whatever path they choose. My problem is when you start limiting that, when you start saying, no, we're going to narrow the scope of what you can do. That's where I get concerned. And look, because I understand, people getting upset that, one thing or another. But when you start saying, no, my kids can't see something, and that you're making that choice and not me, I got a problem with that.
Yeah. But so I think what's interesting too is like, when they're getting upset because of like bad faith fear mongering that's going on from these organizations. Part of their plan, they use Facebook as like a mobilizing tool. I think the quote was like, get them engaged with outrage. They post like out of context quotes from books that are like obscene to try to get parents upset out of context and to sort of build this mob that'll then storm a school board and demand like the removal of books. But it does come from bad faith fear mongering.
No, you're right. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Olivia Little. She's senior researcher over at Media Matters. You want to check out more work that they do, MediaMatters.org is the website. We'll get links out at social media, how you can check that out. Again, one of the main issues, of a recent election was that theory about race that's critical. What was that? That got people all worked up. Now, I, as a parent, back in 2015, we did a civil rights tour where I wanted my kids to learn about the civil rights movement and laborers' involvement in the civil rights movement. And look, I learned a whole bunch of stuff that I was never taught. So for me, the idea of teaching accurate history, what really happened, I think is really important. I don't think we can bury our heads in the sand and go, no, everything was wonderful, like the kind of history that I learned. I want my kids to learn context. I want them to be able to filter stuff. I want them to be able to make decisions for themselves and not have people jam this idealized history of our country down their throats. So why? So maybe we don't make the same mistakes in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And part of what Moms for Liberty is doing, they're not only targeting like library books, they're targeting textbooks too, which I think is particularly frightening because they can modify that history.
Yeah, but that's been going on for, Texas has been doing that for years. They've been rewriting our history, for quite some time. I mean, there was the one point where they wanted to take Thomas Jefferson out and put Phyllis Schlafly in. And you go, explain that kind of, never mind. There's no explanation to be had other than it is indoctrination, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's indoctrination.
So what do we do? I mean, I know there's, and thank goodness for my local library, Bosner Library. Anybody who's listening in my local area here in central Pennsylvania, donate to Bosler. Or if your library in any of the other areas that we're broadcasting in, your library's doing Banned Book Week, by all means, make sure that they've got all the banned books. I ordered my wife to go make sure that they have every banned book on the shelves, so that it's available. So good on them. So give me some thoughts on what the American Library Association is doing here in Banned Book Week.
Oh, I mean, it's just raising awareness about book banning across the country. And then, I mean, specifically how this wave of book banning is targeting, you know, the LGBTQ community, specifically like trans children, targeting any mention of race. But what we can do, I think, one, the media needs to start responsibly covering these organizations. They've let Moms for Liberty characterize themselves as, you know, a grassroots like mom like small moms movement who, you know, they don't have enough money for a microwave and they don't have enough money for a microwave and blah blah blah. But they're really well connected and have such a strong backing, but they've been able to sort of masquerade as grassroots. So I think, one, responsible media coverage, especially with their ties to far right media, their ties to different extremist movements. That's number one, right? Is responsible coverage. Number two, just from a local perspective, just having parental pushback, and which I think is happening across the country. There are groups popping up that are directly in opposition to Moms for Liberty, because, you know, most people trust public educators. That's overwhelmingly, especially in smaller rural areas too, people know, trust teachers, right? So this campaign to undermine public education is difficult when you have an overwhelming trust for educators, right? So just, I don't know, continuing to support public schools and being vocal in opposition to the group.
Yeah, well, the weird thing about it is, though, when you look at public education, it's kind of like the Congress thing. Everyone goes, you know, my person's fabulous, my kids' teachers are great, but it's those other I've heard. And this is where right-wing media is fantastic in creating these anecdotal tales of the other, and they're out there. Trust us, we told you. But our teacher's great, but the other ones, and those are the ones that need to be restrained. Not my kids' teachers, which is again the same playbook that they use for every issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's working, right? They're very successful. Yeah. And they've successfully challenged and removed books across the country, or even had, I think there was a library defunded, a public library voted to be defunded recently too. So it's morphed. It's not just in the school system anymore. It's public libraries as well that are starting to have that facing the same sort of scrutiny.
And this is why we need to be funding our public libraries. So folks, if you want people to actually read and think and be able to have access to books, by all means, fund your local public libraries. Olivia, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Good work. Keep it up. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
All right. Thank you.
Good stuff. Olivia Little. She's a senior researcher over there at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. You want to check that out. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Can you believe, seriously, can you believe where we are in this moment? It's like history repeating itself over and over and over again. You know, remember those images, back, John Lennon said something, we're if you remember, he said something like, we're as big as God or something like that, or big as Jesus or something. And the religious people went mind losing and had these giant fire pits of burning their albums. You had giant book burnings. I remember during the 80s, they'd have steamrollers rolling over things. And my mind goes into this weird place of, I guess this is how capitalism works. Because get outraged about something, destroy a bunch of stuff, and then it dies down and people go back, and then they get outraged about something else, destroy a little stuff. And part of this makes me go, it's amazing at how easy it is to get people riled up and irrationally so. And you watch some of these school board meetings, some of these parents who, again, any person can have a child, need a license to get a dog. Some of these people just irrational. And it's not even really affecting them. It's not even stuff that their kids have been exposed to. It's not even stuff that they can even point to, but it might be. And all these groups have to do, like Moms for Liberty, and I think Randy Weingartner said it earlier. There are some parents out there who may be truly concerned. They're the marching soldiers. They're the ones who are just marching in line, regurgitating the talking points. The mastery of these groups is they take that kernel, that one little bit of outrage. Because look, there's the one story of the drag strip club things at the school. I'm going, that's not the place for that. That's something to be mad about. That's something to go to your school board and say, why? Not the time or the place. But then to say that's happening absolutely everywhere and every teacher, it's ludicrous. They take that one little kernel and they explode it. And we fall for it time and time again. And it's tried, it's true, it's tested. Throw that little bit of outrage candy out there and we just overconsume it. And this is another one of those issues. Like I said, I sit back as an observer, and I'm often in awe at how easy it is to slice and dice us up, to pit us against each other. Because ultimately, you know what we're not doing? We're not solving any real problems. We're not fixing the real problems in education, which is underfunding, massive inequality, massive distribution of resources to the very well-to-do at the expense of the entire working class. The Hunger Games of education. No, we're focused on something that isn't even really a problem. It's like that theory about race that's critical. Nobody's doing it, but we believe it is, and that's all that really matters, isn't it? The believe crowd. Sad stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1906. That was the day that Dr. Harriet Louise Hardy was born in Arlington, Massachusetts. She pursued a career in medicine, driven by personal family tragedy. She lost her father to pneumonia when she was only 4 years old. She also lost a baby brother to the 1918 influenza outbreak. Dr. Hardy became an early leader in the field of occupational medicine. She was also the first woman to become a full professor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Hardy began her career in occupational medicine when she began to investigate the causes of illness among workers making fluorescent lights in factories north of Boston. Many of these workers were women. Dr. Hardy researched the cases of berylliosis in Lynn and Salem, Massachusetts. The metal beryllium is used in the making of the lights. Inhaling dust or fumes of the metal can be deadly, but symptoms often do not begin to show up until years after exposure.
Symptoms include shortness of breath, coughing, and scarred lungs. Dr. Hardy developed the National Beryllium Registry. It was one of the first registries of its kind to track the impact of a chronic health disorder. Her research helped lead to safety measures in the handling of this dangerous metal. Dr. Hardy also worked with unions, including the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union and the United Mine Workers, to identify and address workplace health hazards. These included substances like lead, mercury, anthrax, and asbestos. She wrote a textbook on the subject of industrial toxicology with another pioneer in the field of occupational health, Dr. Alice Hamilton. Dr. Hardy helped to forge new ground in making job sites more safe and healthy for workers.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
For many people, the animals they adopt and love become more like family members than pets. We have deep relationships with cats, dogs, parrots, goats, horses, and other fellow critters who at least pretend to love us back, providing comfort and joy all around. Sadly, though, life for all of us animals is a spin around the wheel of fortune, so illness and injuries happen. That's why one of the most valued members of every community are the staffers in our local veterinarian offices. Practically all vets, nurses, technicians, and support staff are there chiefly because they love animals and get personal satisfaction from providing care for them. When I say they are there, I not only mean 9 to 5, but this group of independent health providers are committed to being there when needed, including off hours and days off, for animal misfortune and suffering don't go by clocks and calendars. Local practitioners also try to be there for low-income people, offering deferred payment plans and even discounted fees so their animals can get the treatment they need. But wait, sound the ambulance sirens. Something is going horribly wrong. This venerable profession has recently been collapsing into a corporate model of Wall Street-owned chains. They are monopolizing markets, reducing staff, gutting service, and prioritizing the love of money over the love of animals. It's not uncommon these days for frantically worried customers to bring an ill or injured pet into their old reliable vet office, only to find it has quietly come under chain ownership, is understaffed, and is unwilling to accept the patient, forcing a desperate scramble to find emergency care, often out of town. This is Jim Hightower saying the same profiteering corporate mentality that has proven disastrous for human health care is now rapidly locking down pet care, and that's an act of animal cruelty.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Pennsylvania Senate race and the governor's race, fun, interesting, odd, bizarre. Dr. Quack went after John Fetterman in the Senate race because evidently John Fetterman was able to get his house from his sister for $1. And this happens in families. I think I know people who their first car, their parents sold it to them for $1. And this is what this looks like. It looks like the sister, basically, was a hand-me-down to him when he was younger, and he paid $1 for it because you got to pay something. You can't just give it to them. You can't gift it to them. You have to pay something. So a lot of people, it's $1. So you're taxed on the $1. So of course, Dr. Quack goes after John Fetterman over this, and with a very mean tweet. Only in John Fetterman's world can you go house hunting and get a home for $1. And you go, you're not very good at this, are you, Dr. Quack? Not even a little bit. So then after this comes out, people started looking into Dr. Quack. And it turns out his aunt, or not his aunt, it's his sister-in-law, I guess, is how this story goes. Turns out, I'm sorry, it's the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law bought her home for $1. And I guess maybe, is she going to be voting for Fetterman here in the election?
This is one of those things where you go, probably. What also interesting, now, again, Oz not very good at the attack mode thing, because he's been attacking Fetterman over his health issues. And look, if you have a stroke, you're going to have some motor function, you're going to need to get back on, do some therapy. I know people have gone through this. They are perfectly fine, but getting words from their brain to their mouth, there's a little disconnect. And so they're really trying to goad and to push on this. And look, I understand it. This is a political campaign. This is what you do. Trying to connect with voters, try to point out the inequality and the inequities and the deficiencies. Well, it turns out, Oz went and released his copies of his medical records today. So that we keep the focus on Fetterman. It turns out he got a letter from his doctor, not the kind of crazy one that you saw from Trump's doctor, that quack. But this one says, oh, he's great, he's wonderful, he's got great health, his blood pressure, everything's fabulous. But evidently, the doctor's office is not in Pennsylvania. It's actually on Fifth Avenue. And you go, well, this was probably a bad idea there, Dr. Quack. Probably a bad idea, because the point is everybody in this state is wondering why you're running for Senate in Pennsylvania when you live in New Jersey and your doctor's in New York. Do you have anything in Pennsylvania other than a rental property? Yeah, I do better. You're going to have to do better at this. You're not very good at it. Not very good at it at all. Now, Oz, along with Doug Mastriano, the Nazi candidate for governor, they both want to suppress people's ability to vote. They both support the voter ID scheme. They also, this is the part that, I had someone bring up to me the other day. He goes, we need voter ID, we need in-person voting, and we need yearly voter registration. And I'm going, do you know what that entails? Do you know that means you? Well, only for people who don't vote. Then there's that caveat. And I'm going, whoa. Is it every year, or is it only when you don't vote? So which is it? And this is the problem with the right-wing talking points. They're not all on the same page on this one. Now, I think, Mastriano and company would love it to be if people had to re-register every election cycle. But I wonder what their base would think when they realize that it's them that they're talking about. This, again, is understand what the policy that you're talking about would actually do. Now, I love this idea that there's all this fraud and all of this nonsense going on because people are registered in more than one place. That is not voter fraud. And this is what they're taking as voter fraud. I had someone tell me, he's registered in multiple places. And I go, probably, but did he vote? That's what I want to know. When I moved to Pennsylvania years ago, I was registered in Ohio. I could have drove the 5 hours back to Cleveland to vote if I really wanted to. I probably would have gotten caught. Probably would have gone to jail, because nobody does that, because it's the payoff. The payoff is kind of minute. And I look at someone like Mastriano, who up until, I guess, 2012, actually lived in Pennsylvania and voted in New Jersey. Was he still registered to vote while he was living here, voting here? Probably. Because how many people, when they move to a different location, call and cancel their voter registration? I don't think I've ever met anybody. I know when I go to the DMV and they say, hey, do you want to register to vote? I do, just to make sure. So now is that voter fraud? That knowing that I'm already registered and I go, yeah, sure, register just to make sure that all my information's right. Is that voter fraud? The answer is no, because I didn't try and vote twice. And this is where I think we have to have the right conversations. But I guess that's way above the heads of the folks here. Fun and entertaining. And speaking of fun and entertaining, I don't actually know where this is going to go, But I'm actually looking forward to this upcoming podcast. The CIA has launched a podcast. I'm not making this up. The secret, the spook agency, the back shadows people. We're now moving into the podcast world. I wonder if they'll have Amazon ads. They say that they want to step out from the shadows and demystify the work that it does, and they want to help. They want to help America. They want to help America understand what it is the CIA does. I'm waiting for the FBI to come out with one too. Maybe we'll have the Golden Palace stories. Maybe we'll get interviews with the people who raided the Golden Palace, and we'll find out all about the classified documents strewn across the floor. Is this a good idea? The CIA having a podcast? Is it possible that this could just be misinformation and stuff that the CIA does? I'm distrustful of the CIA. I'm distrustful of a lot of things. But when I see the CIA coming out with a podcast, it kind of makes me wonder why. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, if you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts, maybe even where you find the CIA's podcast. You will find ours. Going to take a quick break, right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. President Richard Milhous Nixon issued the Philadelphia Plan. The goal of the plan was to require building trades unions to admit black members into their ranks. Nixon believed this would show him as a civil rights supporter without having to give in to the more radical demands of the civil rights movement. Affirmative action opponents sued to kill the plan, but they were unsuccessful. Prior to the introduction of the Philadelphia Plan, construction unions nationwide were almost exclusively white. Throughout the 1960s, black workers organized to demand access in construction trades in many northern cities. In Philadelphia in 1967, black workers protested to integrate construction work. This led to federal attention and Nixon's plan. The plan required 6 Philadelphia building trades to create numerical goals for integrating their locals. They had to meet those goals to get federal contracts. Many white construction workers nationwide opposed the plan. Construction workers in Pittsburgh and Chicago held protest rallies. In practice, Nixon had very little interest in strong enforcement of his plan. He wanted to use it to defend himself when critics attacked his administration's civil rights record. Civil rights leaders saw through Nixon's charade. Real progress in desegregating construction work was very slow, and the Nixon administration did little to change that. Still, Nixon's plan was a step, however small, at integrating the building trades. Another important step was the founding of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists in September of 1972 in Chicago. Today, the organization has members in more than 1,200 locals and works to increase and support black members of trade unions. Today, integration of the trades remains an incomplete project. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So Republicans little concerned They haven't had the big bounce that they were expecting going into November. Still hasn't happened for them because, well, Biden's approval ratings keep going up. I mean, what have we had? 99 straight days of falling gas prices. You got the whole, women looking towards November. Oops. The fact that Democrats finally got their heads out of their behinds and started pushing for an agenda, had some legislative wins that are going to actually help people. Well, that red wave that they were expecting, not so much. So what are they doing? They're doing what they do best, going to the golden oldies, the divisive stuff, which is why McCarthy today had his contract on America or commitment to America, using a nonsense slogan from Lehman Brothers. It's one of those moments where you go, not surprising. I'm waiting for caravans again. But, just as good as caravans, they keep talking about, the borders, the drugs, fentanyl from China now. And yeah, do we have problems? Yeah, we got problems. But have they done anything to fix it? Nope. Thomas sent me an email during the break. He says, Rick, what do you say about our open border? He says, there are criminals walking across the border bringing drugs and guns to our country. Can you get behind border security, please? President Trump wanted to build the wall and you Dems stopped him and complained. There's so much in here. So much. Like the part about bringing guns into the country. You mean the guns that started here? That we then shipped over there? You mean those guns? And this idea that people are just walking across the border, they're just unimpeded. They're just walking across like it's wide open. In fact, it's like a nature walk. It's ludicrous what we've done. And now he says that Trump wanted to build the wall, but if you listen to Trump said he built the wall, or if he had a couple more weeks, he would have built the wall. Whatever. Here's the thing. And this open border narrative is one of the things that has just driven me crazy. Do you know how much money we spend on border security? Do you have any idea what we spend on border security? In 2001, we had less than 10,000 Border Patrol agents, and we're now almost to 20,000. It's doubled over that period of time. But no, it's wide open. It's porous. There's nothing going on. This administration requested $97.3 billion with a B dollars for Homeland Security for fiscal year 2023. Billions of dollars for border security, for immigration enforcement. Billions. And you know who voted against it? Oh, yeah, the Republicans. So, I mean, it's one of these things where you go, I know you keep throwing this out as an issue. And this is what Republicans are brilliant at, and I give them credit because you need the pointer dog. You need the pointer dog to go problem, 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 problem. You never see them go, I got a solution. Every time something comes up that there's an opportunity to do something, they're against it. For instance, the infrastructure bill was going to provide billions of dollars to strengthen security on the border. It's going to happen. Republicans voted against it. I mean, forget all of the other infrastructural improvements, all the roads and the bridges and all the airport stuff and all the the waterways and all the stuff that's going to help. There would have been money for border security. They're against it. Think about, and it's coming soon, think about the next time Republicans want to shut the government down because we don't want to extend the debt ceiling. Think about what that's going to do to border security. Think about the next time they don't want to pass a budget or even a continuing resolution that's going to fund the government, and we want to shut that down. Not even giving TSA a dime, or the Custom and Border Patrol people, or Immigration and Customs, or any of those people. Nope, sorry, nothing for you. So they create a crisis, because now there's shut down, and then it's Joe Biden's fault. I mean, the reality is the Biden administration has been just as bad at the border as the Trump administration, following the same policies. They haven't changed the policies yet. They're still using Title 42 from the CDC. What was the number I saw? Biden expelled something like more than 1 million people in the first 11 months. Shouldn't that make Republicans all tingly in the panties and all warm and fuzzy down the legs? But that's not what this is about. This is about creating that outrage. This is about getting people all riled up and pointing. Joe Biden did this, without understanding that this has been decades in the making. So to point at Biden and go, this is Biden's fault, is ludicrous. And to have McCarthy or any Republicans in the House or Senate say anything about immigration is just ridiculous, because do you know where immigration policy has to emanate from? That's right, Congress. This is Congress's failure. Congress has failed to move any legislation. The last time we had any major overhaul of our immigration system was 1986, and that was the Reagan era. Reagan gave amnesty to some 3 million undocumented people, and boy, the Republicans have never forgotten it. Losing their minds. Now you never hear that from the people who think Reagan was a saint. And it's kind of hard on how they put him up on the pedestal while still being angry about that. But that's the last time we've had major comprehensive labor or immigration reform in this country, or any policy change. 1986. I'm not very good at math, but that was a long time ago. If you remember, during the W years, W tried to do something, and it failed because of congressional Republicans, mainly because of his own party. There were Democrats and liberals and people who were against it. There were parts of it I was against. The idea that we're going to chip people, kind of against that, because, understand, it comes down to radical self-interest. When you start chipping people, we start with the people with the least power, the illegals, the undocumented. We chip them first because nobody cares about them. And then we go after the criminals. Oh, criminals, we're going to chip them so we can start tracking them. And then, the poor. Well, if you want welfare, if you want unemployment, or if you want, some kind of help, I'm going to have to chip you. Until eventually, well, it means you. Now, I know there are some places people have voluntarily gotten chipped, and if that's what you want to do so you can use the vending machine, you go right ahead. I'm not so fond of it. And, right around this time when they were talking about this chipping people in the immigration bill, I remember my oldest daughter was born. And it was right around the time where we had done the cord blood saving thing. Because I had read somewhere that, if you store the cord blood, that you'll have original stem cells. And if the kids ever get leukemia, childhood leukemia, or, whatever diseases, you got a chance of curing it. So it was a little bit pricey, but, as new parents, I'm like, I want to give them everything I never had. You know how that goes. So we went and we did this, and evidently we were like one of the first to do this at the hospital, which I guess triggered an alarm somewhere. And before you know it, I got another guy coming up to me going, hey, you want to chip the kid too? It wasn't like that, but offered this V-chip thing. And anybody who was around back then remembers you had Tommy Thompson, the head of Health and Human Services, who was promising to be chipped because it was going to be the way we do things. He never did, by the way, just so you know. But I remember, the guy going, we could chip the child, and if she's ever abducted, we can find her. And I'm going, what if she doesn't want to be found? Or what if she is abducted? Where do you put it? Well, we put it right here. I go, does that mean they're going to chop her arm off? Probably. I didn't do it because that's a bit creepy and a bit, Orwellian for me. But the technology was there, and they wanted to use it in that immigration bill. And ultimately, Republicans shot it down. Not for that reason, just because it wasn't mean and cruel enough. And you had Romney in 12. What was he calling for? It was self-deportation, which I wasn't completely against. The idea that we go after employers and say you can't hire undocumented people because we want people coming out of the shadows. I don't believe we can have undocumented people being exploited by corporate America. Just don't. because that's going to pull working conditions down for everybody. If they can use people who are in the shadows and exploitable, that means conditions are going to get worse for everyone. As a union guy, I don't care who you are or what you do or how you do it. If you work under my contract, you get the same wages, hours, conditions as everybody else, because that's what the contract says. The employer should not be able to go, hey, I got this guy, he's undocumented, we can get him for half price. That's bad for all of us. So Romney had this idea of, going after employers and and people would not be able to find jobs, and they would self-deport themselves. That was the idea. And people were, no, that's cruel. And I'm going, well, got to start somewhere. I'm actually not horribly opposed to this. Hold employers accountable, give people a pathway to become citizens, because I want people to be citizens. That got shot down. Republicans shot that down completely. And then you had this, this opportunity in 2013 to move this along. And there were 14 Republican senators that said, okay, we'll go along. Who killed it? House Republicans. So at every step of the way, when there's an opportunity to maybe get something done, Republicans kill it. Why? Because it's their issue. It's how they keep us divided. It's how they keep us pitted against each other. They need it. If it were to be solved, if we were to solve problems, what would they do to make us angry? What could they trot out? What club could they pull out of the bag when it's crunch time? When there should be a red wave and there doesn't appear to be one. What can we do to make people stupid? If you were to solve these problems, what could you do? That's why none of this stuff ever gets done. And this is the frustrating part of this. Look, I have problems with our immigration system too. I think it's inhumane. I think it needs to be streamlined. But more importantly, I think we should be creating an environment where people want to stay in their countries. And this is where back in 2010, when the Tea Parties go, we need to cut foreign spending and we need to cut foreign aid. I'm going, no, we need to be increasing that so that people can live in their communities and thrive in their communities. We need to make investments there so they don't trek here. Because, I would assume they want to stay home with their family. They don't want to walk 1,000 miles across horrible conditions. And just so you know, that the border that you think is so porous and wide open and so welcoming and easy to cross, some of the stories I've seen are not quite so much. In fact, so much so that I doubt many Americans could make the trip. I know I wouldn't want to. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not against doing something on border security. I'm not against having secure borders, but doing dumb things like building a giant wall when we have ladders and shovels seems like kind of a dumb thing. And then building slats straight up and down so people shimmy up one side and back down in 15 or 16 seconds, kind of a waste of money. Just my thoughts, but I appreciate the email. Anybody got questions, comments? I'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program? Make sure you grab the podcast from iTunes to iHeart, Podbean, Stitcher, everywhere in between. That's where we will be found. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.